What is up, everybody? Everybody wants to rule the world. Except Aubs, because he's a very humble individual. We had a great conversation today. No, it was a good time. We went to the Quad Cities. Me and Molly. We, like I said in the episode, we recorded at East Side Sound Studios, did a track, did some fun stuff. We were there for like fucking 3.5 hours, and 2 of those 3.5 hours were trying to figure out how to set up the FL. I guess the guy that was supposed to show up and do that didn't do that. So, but we did a good track. It was a lot of fun. Then we did a podcast. I don't remember where the fucking site is that we did at. Maybe best that they don't know. I don't know. I know it's associated with the Quad City Arts stuff. And it was downtown. It was nice. One of the things I want to mention before starting the episode is toward the end especially, there is a lot of background noise. Just the venue it had a great setup, but it wasn't necessarily the best for sound prevention. There was another event going on down the hall. It seemed to be God damn it, dude, can you not chew that during my podcast? Why do you have to be such a fuck? Jesus. Anyways, so we did this. Yeah, but there was a lot of noise going on in the background, and ironic that Duke decided to start chewing on his toy at that point. But yeah, it was weird. It was like a 7-person round table discussion type deal. I don't know. Aubrey was saying that it was like something with they were doing like a live reading or something. I don't know. Anyways, we had a really good conversation. We talked about a lot of different things that I think this conversation was kind of the conversation that we've always kind of wanted to have. We've kind of always danced around a lot of the topics that we covered today. I think we finally got to them. Because he's primarily a teacher and artist. Actually, we hadn't ever talked about his teaching, so I'm really glad that we got to talk about that. But he's a very good individual, very kind individual, and hope you guys enjoyed the episode. All right.
Hello, everybody. You're watching / listening to the McAllister Hours. I'm your host, as always, Cole McAllister. We are live in the Quad Cities with Aubs. I guess not live. We're live here.
Yeah, right now we're live.
Live enough. Live from Molly.
It'll be live to them too, just live in a different way. So,
how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing really good. Really good despite all the busyness I'm kind of caught into as of lately.
We've had a busy fucking day. We were at East Side Sound Studio recording. It took us a little bit to figure it all out, but we got the track laid out.
We're Fruity Loop experts. All y'all who went to school for 4 years, we learned it in an hour. What up?
What up, you college bastards?
Right.
You got nothing on.
No degree.
Speaking of degree, I wanted to ask you before we start. So you just recently finished your program, correct?
Yeah, yep. I finished my bachelor's in educational studies from Western Governors University just like a couple months ago, and then I jumped into this little master's program at Western Illinois University just to kind of get my licensing to work with more special needs and behavioral cultured students. So
okay,
it just made sense.
So how's being back in school then, or because you're teaching as well, right?
Yeah, man. Teaching just been...
You're just busy as hell, man.
Man, teaching, and mind you, it's only been a week. Teaching in this atmosphere. I always try to make it a point to tell people though I'm in this like realm of like teaching, I've always been a teacher. Like I was always teaching workshops on the side. I was always running these little projects I was doing. So like it's still teaching just in a different platform where like there's more paperwork, there's more responsibilities, there's more like of just like being okay failing, I guess. Like this, like I've been like, we've only been in for like a week, and like I've been like really just trying to accept the fact that like this is my first time teaching in this realm, and like I'm gonna fuck up. Like I can't I can't keep thinking like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be my first year awesome. There's not gonna be any mistakes. It's not gonna be any errors. It's like, man, like that's just setting yourself up for failure. You just gotta be okay with fucking up and like depending on people. So I think that's like hard for me too. Just like being somebody who's like a creative, where like I just depend on myself with my creativity. You know, it's just like something where like I don't have to really ask for help for nothing. Like I know how to do it. So like for me, it's always like quote unquote perfect. But now that I don't, which is good to have in like that space. I think there's nothing wrong with having that space. But like when when you put it into a broad entity of how you think, like, and you go into spaces where you're like, oh, well, I'm perfect at this, I'm not gonna fail. Like with me teaching, it's just like, no, it's gonna happen though. Like if you don't accept that part, like shit's gonna just fuck up all the more. So like it's made me more like not really like looking at myself in a bad way if I give the kids 10 more minutes of math on accident, or if I'm not teaching a lesson because somebody just fought in the hallway and I'm like, man, like there was a fight in the hallway. Y'all ain't even thinking about work. Let's just play some games, you know, like I got to be able to understand like that's just, it's going to be like that until I figure shit out. Like, so I'm going to fuck up and I got to be okay with that. So it's been humbling in that. Like it's been hard, but it's been humbling for sure.
Yeah, I feel like I have that same issue personally. Like every time whether it's musical or my job, I always feel like I'm so self-critiquing myself, and if I fuck up, it is like a dagger in my brain. I'm just constantly thinking, you know, it's really easy to get in that trap.
Yeah, seriously, I have this really good homie, Anna, is her name. It's my homie from Indianapolis. But she kind of put me on this like mantra I've kind of created for myself, just like saying like, shit don't gotta be perfect to be worth it. You know, like I don't gotta create a perfect lesson plan to get kids' attention. Like if I'm just like a human making mistakes and like switching things as needed and like I'm human about it and still like present with the kids, I'm cool. Like I don't gotta make a perfect ass lesson and be like, oh, I'm gonna be mad or I'm gonna feel less of a teacher if that shit don't work. It's just like it ain't gonna work sometimes. Like like sometimes you'll have a kid like having a mental breakdown, you'll have a fight in the classroom, that shit will happen and you won't be able to do the shit you want. Like that's okay. But it's hard because it's just like it's one of those things like I think we're just programmed to try to think of things like as judge everything as like good if it's perfect, you know. So being able to shift the idea like it's good if it's imperfect too is like it's been hard like try not to be perfect or try to be something but just do my shit.
Well, I appreciate that outlook because I feel like there are a lot of people who they think of education like they have to, like you said, like it has to be perfect, and they feel like they have to control everything.
Yeah,
like and like parents alike too, like they're not really willing to let their kid or their student or whatever like really explore options and really, you know. I listened to. Have you heard of the Dark Horse podcast?
No, I never heard of that joke.
Brett Weinstein and Heather Hine, I highly recommend it. You know, they were talking about. They're big biology people, and they were talking about evolution and how it's necessary for us as humans to develop to, you know, to make mistakes. To, you know, if you're outside and you scrape your knee, like that's going to be more beneficial to you than sitting in a box playing video games all day, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like you're going to pull something from it that like makes you more of you. But like that's one thing that I kind of like, I've noticed that about myself where like, because I'm such just like just go with the flow person, like, I kind of look at like that kind of like seeps into what I do educationally, and it looks different from everybody. And sometimes I kind of feel isolated in it. I'm like, man, like I'm the only one willing to break this rule right now because the students breaking. It kind of feels like I'm like an island of isolation. It's not to say like none of my coworkers are dope as fuck. Like all the coworkers I work with at the school that I work at, like they're all dope at what they do. Like I always make it a point to say that because like I'm super quiet and to myself at work, so I think people perceive me as just like, oh, he thinks he's just better than everybody. He's just talking, but he's like, no, like. I just don't like when I'm in the zone. Like I'm here to work. So like I feel like they're dope as heck. But I feel like there was a situation that happened with one of my students last week, and the student came in with a hoodie. And like one of our rules for the school is like you don't wear hoodies inside and all this. So like it's something that staff like stick to the T because they're like we got to honor the rules, we got to follow the rules, we got to follow the law. my whole state and churchism, you know.
Yeah.
Where it's just like we got to follow the law to do great at our job. So, but what they didn't know was like this kid who came with the hoodie, like he just got pulled from his grandma from like DCFS, I think it was on that, and he got pulled, and then the person who adopted him, this like 21-year-old like white girl.
What? How'd they even let her adopt someone?
Single.
Oh my goodness.
You know, like adopted him, and like I think after a week they're like, man.
Have you ever read a paper? Like ever? Like, come on.
I'm saying like, where do you think that works at? And it's just like, mind you, I used to like at some point, and it's before like I started really thinking about shit and be like, that doesn't work, you dummy. Like I always thought like, man, like if I adopted a kid, like I do by myself, but it's just like you have to have that both dynamic for the kid.
You have
like,
to have two. Yeah.
I've seen where it's like transformed because
It's been proven time and time again.
I'm telling you, you have to. It's one of those things. It's not a whole like I know people who are like on that feminist kind of like that toxic feminist type thing. They're like, oh no, I can do it by myself. It's like no, you can't. It's like you really can. You're just gonna fuck up kids all the more if you have that mindset. But like, with that said, this person who adopted him, they're like, they adopted him for a week and they couldn't do it anymore. So this kid had to go to a shelter, sleep in his hoodie, away from his family, by himself. This kid comes in like in a hoodie, and like the staff were kind of on him, like saying like, oh, he can't wear a hoodie inside. He can't wear a hoodie inside. And like I told my admins at the time that I was like, yo, like if this kid comes in with a hoodie, yo, I'm gonna let it go. Like I'm not worried about a hoodie right now. Are you fucking serious? Like this nigga just went through those worst shit in the world. It's like where Lynn wears his hood, that's a place of comfort and security. So like I got past the staff like, nah, they can wear the hoodie down, and like one of them like super huffy puffy about it. But I was like, man, like if you don't get it, like damn, that just kind of shows like how like you can't like that. That's when I think about those moments, like people have no place to be mad at people who say like, man, my teachers sucked. Like my teachers were terrible because like moments like that, like you're more worried about a hoodie than letting that kid just being able to be like, you know what, like why do you want to wear it inside? Like let's just talk and hang out. You know, it's funny. I talked to this kid and hung out with him for 2 hours. We didn't even do work when he got in, and like 2 hours later, he had his hoodie off like they wanted. I'm like, oh, I just had to talk to him. Like, have you ever tried that? Like,
yeah, right.
You know, so I honor that part of me that like is willing to kind of bend the rules a little bit, but you know.
No, I appreciate that. Do you find yourself like kind of in an uphill battle? Because I feel like, you know, just knowing you as a person, I don't know how much you fit into the mold of like education. You know, I mean, that's not you know, that I actually view that as a compliment. Like,
yeah.
I think we need more people in that. But do you ever find like a lot of frustration in that with coworkers or anything like that?
No, I just like, and like, again, it has something to do with my coworkers. I think it just got something to do with,
I guess just the system in general.
No, I'm glad that you said that though. Cause like there is like basis like where like it's validated to feel kind of like the fish out of water and all of that. And like be like kind of feel like the fish out of water around other educators. But like for me, like, I don't think it's anything the educators I work with do, but it's more so just a perception of like what education has kind of been deemed like as a whole. Like it kind of makes me feel a sense of like I shouldn't be there, because like I think about it like this. So when we began this year off, before like the kids, we had like a whole PD. We had like a half a PD week where we like did like professional developments and we're setting our classrooms up. And I was in my classroom setting it up with my TA and my para at the time, and the new gym teacher, and like mind you, he didn't do this on purpose. It was just kind of showed just to make a point. But like we had a new gym teacher who walked into my classroom, and like he had these his schedule, and he walked past me and gave it to my TA, who was a white woman, and then he walked out, and I'm like, wow, like that's something that people would call like a microaggression, get mad at and all that. But I'm like he didn't know, but like that's interesting that he like assumed that like because I'm black and a male that I'm not a teacher, and he gave it to the white woman in my classroom thinking she was the teacher. I'm like, wow, this is interesting. But like, I think it's things like that kind of like back to what you were saying, like kind of make me feel like I don't belong sometimes. Like I'm like, man, I come here, I'm this black educator, like who's a male. Like this is different. And like, I just think different because like, I feel like people, like I tell people like this, like it's kind of like a thing where like, I don't even say it with a negative connotation or like anything. It's like, oh, like I just don't feel like I fit in. Like I just feel like, I was telling Seven the Misfit this at the way to the studio where we're going to, but I told him like this, like my little sister described me as like, last time I hung out with my little sister who just recently moved to Nashville, she described me as like a person who like is kind of like somebody who has like a ghost blanket thrown over him, and like he has like the little eyes out and everything, and I'm looking around at people and I'm noticing people, but nobody's like really noticing me, but there's maybe a couple people that are like, you see this weird motherfucker in like who has this blanket thrown. thrown at him with these crazy socks. Like, why is they pointing at him? Like, this motherfucker's weird as shit. She's like, that's who you are. And like, that honestly low-key inspired a project I wanted to work on in the future. But I think just being that person, like, I've always felt like that in like whatever space that I am, like that I'm there, but I'm really not there.
Yeah.
Like, I don't fully belong. Like, whether it's like growing up, again, like being somebody who's called white all the time, I didn't feel kind of like I didn't feel like I didn't belong in what blackness was. So like everybody's saying I'm white because I talk white, because I dress white, because I fight white, because I fuck with white. Not coke. That sounds like drugs. And it sounds like something that was sexually weird, but I'm like, because I dated white girls like growing up, because I was, again, like, it's that interesting science where like I heard that I was white so much, I'm like, okay, I guess I fit in here. But like with that said, like I felt like I never was like fully a part of blackness. Being somebody who wrote poetry growing up, I wrote poetry because like I didn't feel like I could rap because people said I was white. So I don't really feel like I fully fit into rap. So I wrote poetry. And now being somebody who's spoken word, who was influenced by rap, I don't really feel fully a part of like what spoken word poetry is, you know? And I feel like I've always had these little threads of like always feeling like not completely apart. Like it's no different here. Like I'm like, man, like I don't really feel like I should be a teacher because like I'm just different. You know, and it's not to say that nobody else is different, but it's just like, you know, like, I don't know what it is, just that because of like what the image of what a teacher is, I just don't fit that, like what it is, like people. And I'm like, damn, like, am I an imposter right now? Should I really be here? Like,
well, if I can offer my 2 cents, I think the image of a teacher is, for me, I was always terrible in school. I've never liked the, you know, just the structured education system. And I know, you know, I always tell people, you're one of the smartest people I know. So I'm confident that whatever you're doing it in a intelligent and roundabout way. You're not just, you know, winging it or whatever.
Yeah, man. It's just like, it's sometimes I be mad at myself. Like, damn, like I wish I was one of the motherfuckers just wing shit. Cause like this shit is hard. When you got to sit down and really think like, okay, I got to write this lesson plan that's really going to be effective for this student over here, this student over here, this student over here who like is 5 levels behind these students over here. And then having this student over here who's not even verbal. Like, when you try, like, I could be that just teacher who's just like, I'm just going to teach this one thing, and if you get it, you get it, whatever. But I'm like, man, like, it's hard work, but, you know, it's like one of those things that, like, you seen the movie Soul before, right?
Saw?
Soul.
Oh, Soul. No, I have not.
Oh, bro. Watch that shit. Oh, my goodness. Like,
that's the jazz one, right? The animated.
Watch that shit.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the movies that I think I'll recommend to, like, the day I die, because that movie is just, like, it's just powerful. Like, if I give you kind of if I talk about it, what, like, are you a spoilers? Like, I don't want any spoilers.
No, go for it.
So like, the movie's about like this guy whose his name's Joe. He's a middle school teacher who teaches band, and he's like a super badass like pianist, and he's played for like jazz concerts, jazz bands. It's like he's really dope at what he does, and he gets this gig. One of his past students, say who he was a teacher to, hit him up and said, I have this gig with Dorothea, Dorothy, I believe her name was, like this big jazz singer. And it's like, yo, like that's a big gig. Like I'm going to leave my middle school job, go chase this gig. And he ends up getting the gig. And right after he gets it, he dies. This dude just died because he made a mistake and all that. But after he dies, he becomes this soul. And he finds out he's about to die, but he's like, man, I'm trying to get this gig back. Like I'm about to die and all that, you know. Pretty much like the whole, long story short, the run of the movie, like, he kind of finds out that, like, he thinks his purpose is to be, like, a jazz player and all this. And, like, he forget, like, there's parts of the movie where it shows threads of, like, how he's impacted the kids around him and how impactful he could be. Like, there's threads of, like, him enjoying life in that, you know. And he realizes that, like, man, like, life isn't about jazz. So I'm this dope-ass jazz player. Like, life's just about just enjoying what I do in the present moment, you know. And that's made him a better person living in life. So, like, I really, like, connected with that movie. And I tell people like this, like, I feel like if Joe wasn't a black middle school teacher who was, like, a creative, I don't think I would have connected with it as much as I did. Like, I feel it kind of, like, goes spoken of, like, why, like, it's dope to have, like, diverse characters in movies, you know. If he was a white dude, I would have been like, oh, man, I feel that, but I don't think I would have felt it the same because I connected with this dude because he was, like, black, you know. I feel like there's something to be said about that, you know. But I connected with that movie so much of just, like, man, like, I'm in the same, like, I'm pretty much Joe, like, I'm a middle school teacher right now, like, and I'm dope at, like, I love fucking art. Like, I love poetry, rap. Like, I'm dope at what I do. And I feel like I've kind of been, like, in this kind of, like, transition as of lately of kind of, like, not putting myself not investing myself so much in identity that, like, I'm like getting to this like unnecessary grief when it's gone. And I say that and like in the fact of just like realizing that like with this master's program with teaching, my whole schedule is like Monday through Friday. I am teaching and I'm a student. I ain't touching nothing art. Saturdays, it's my strict art day. And if I have some like lesson plans to put together, I'm gonna do that. But Sunday is for sure gonna be a work day, and I gotta make that a work day because that's the next day, and I gotta get everything ready for students. You know, it's kind of been like I've been less of an artist. Not even that. I've been less of an artist in poetry and rap. I've just been an artist in education right now, and it feels like that. Like I've kind of caught myself being so invested in being like an artist, being a spoken word artist, being a rapper, that like I feel a sense of like unnecessary grief. This sense of unnecessary grief was just like, man, like, oh, I'm not going to be a rapper anymore. I'm not going to be a poet anymore. Kind of like thinking that my life purpose was that. It's just like, no, like literally when I think about it, there's this, you know, those books in kindergarten that they have you do, like where you like have that about me sheet that's like your favorite color, your favorite food, your parents' names, and what do you want to be when you grow up? I shit you not. When I was in kindergarten, and I gotta find this book in my parents' house because it's there, and I want to just show people because I want to show them the receipts of this because I think people will think it's like bullshit because it sounds so mystical. But when I was in kindergarten, when I wrote this book, what I wrote that I wanted to be was a teacher. I wrote that when I was 6, 7 years old, in like kindergarten, you know. And it's just like the fact that like it's happened now. I'm like, man, like I'm always where I was supposed to be. Like the universe has been like, yo, like you're doing all these things, but you got to remember at your core, like this is where you know you've always should have been. So it's just like what this kind of done for me is just like, even though it's like hard ass work, like it's exhausting. Like that's just already tired after a week. So like I'd be lying if I didn't say like, God damn, I got 176 more days of this shit. Like, oh shit, like this shit's gonna hurt. Like,
Yeah,
I'd be lying if I'd say that wasn't there. But at the same time, I'm like, man, like it's kind of dope to know that I'm where I know I've always supposed to be. I've always supposed to been at. You know, I'm finally here after like that 7-year-old who wrote in that book. I'm gonna be a teacher. Like I'm here. It's just like I just gotta enjoy it. You know, so like I've just been enjoying it. So like it's kind of offset the exhaustion a little bit. Like every day is emotionally exhausting, mentally exhausting, physically exhausting. You know, it's just exhausting in general because I'm giving myself to students and shit.
Wow.
You know, and it's just like, man, like, but it's cool because like I'm right where I wanted to be. You know.
Yeah.
So
Well, there's
like,
obviously a huge amount of drive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's fucking awesome, man. Yeah, I love what you do, man. You do a ton of shit.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's fun shit.
You just released your last project, In It, Not Of It.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
That was a dope little project.
First of all, let me ask you, like, because I kind of picked up on it through listing it, but what would you say is like the overall concept and meaning of that project to you?
It's kind of just like my life, really. Like I kind of told you, like being this kind of this like mystical ghost kind of figure around people. Like I've always been that person I've always been a person who was like in it and not of it. Like I'm black, but black people will tell you different. So I'm in it, but I'm not really fully of it. And also, like, the white folks over here, they'll tell you I'm cool, but they'll also tell you that I live in the ghetto and that my parents are ghetto and all that. And they said I need to stop talking to Ebonics. So I'm always in it over here, but not of it, you know? So I've always been, like, kind of this fish out of water in different places. I haven't, like, fully been, like, in one place. So I feel like it's kind of been healthy for me in a sense of just, like, I know how to just, like, observe spaces and not really judge. I'm not saying that I don't judge places. Like, I still judge people. Like, I just told Holman this morning, people say the whole shit, like, you can't judge a book by its cover. Motherfucker, that's what a book cover's for, judging. Like, I do judge. Like, that's
funny.
Like, motherfuckers be lying when they say, like, I'm not a judgmental person. It's like, yes, you are.
I think that's a human component. I don't think anybody is
it's just
non-judgmental.
Like, shut your ass up. Like, you a judge, but, like, I judge still. But, like, I feel like there's an art of judgment that I've kind of learned where, like, there's some things I just can observe and just, like, take in and be like, wow, okay, like, this person who said this and that.
Yeah, there's a difference between like jumping to a conclusion and thinking something through.
Exactly.
You know?
Really kind of sitting with something, you know, like I feel like I've always been that person who's just like okay with sitting with things, you know, just sitting with things and like not really jumping to like, oh, this is wrong or this is right, but like being able to sit with them and like really understand them. So like I think being in and not of it has kind of like it made me observe life in that way. So that's kind of what that project's dedicated to, like kind of like me, my rawest form of just like, this is what in and out of it looks like for me. Like this is what it looks like in my introversion of like not having friends, you know, quote unquote. Yeah. This is what it looks like when I'm pondering like who I am. Like when I talk about tracks like Gods, which is one of my favorite tracks, actually, low-key favorite
I was actually just listening to that the other day again. I want to talk to you about that later, but yeah. I really appreciate some of the sentiment in that track.
Yeah.
And just the project overall.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, like I had a lot of like, again, it was like a 2-year project where I was just piecing it together slowly with just homies. Like I recorded it a lot. I have tracks from Preston. I have tracks from my homie Oscar Franklin from the UK, like a super dope dude who I've been able to build a relationship like outside of this country, you know.
That's cool.
He contributed to that project. Orlando Coolridge from Chicago contributed to that project. So like having all these different people and then having like people to deliver verses like this dude Ray Murado. If you have never checked out Ray Murado, bro, check his shit out. Like dude is stupid dope. Like he's just different, but like he's from Atlanta. And being able to like collab with dudes like from Atlanta and like have him put a verse on that, have kids, person from Cali, John Fletch, throwing a verse on it. Like it was cool seeing all that collective energy and all the collaboration kind of like form this project that was like meaningful, you know. So it's definitely like one of my favorite rap wise because like Sensei Syllables, those projects are like that was me kind of just like showing off a little bit art wise. Like it was about anything rhyme or reason. I was just rapping the rap, but these ones are just about something. Like they're kind of just about like. It's pretty much the beginning of like what my projects are gonna start looking like from now on. Like they're gonna be about something. I'm gonna have those fun tracks where I'm just doing rap shit, but like there's always gonna be a narrative or something about them. Like you know that's tied to like who I am and shit.
Yeah, you know one of the things I've always appreciated about you is you definitely have a concept behind each album. It's very apparent when you put a release that like there's a concept behind this. And like, you know there's messages within each song, but there's also over circumferencing. Thing. I noticed in your track you had audio bits from your father. What was all that about, and how'd that come about? And does he listen to your music? Like, is he a fan of it, or?
No, I don't think he listens to it. You know, it's one of those things. My dad's the most biggest like introvert in the world. Like,
oh, okay.
He's super like. I feel like I all my introvert traits I definitely pull from him. Like just little things he does. Like I've just noticed it. So like he's just kind of like he's a dude who's like he's very in it and not of it. He's in the world. And he's like. He doesn't get offended by shit. He doesn't really care about shit. He's just, okay, cool. This is just how I live. I enjoy you still. I like you, you know. But so we were having this conversation, and like whenever like I have this habit of like, and this is kind of where the Biz Tapes project kind of came from. But like whenever I have conversations with people that I think are gonna be dope, I record them, and I'm like, and let those be inspiration for like tracks later, you know. Like there's a bunch of shit that I like homies don't even know yet. Until I make the tracks that like I recorded a conversation that we had that was about something that was like very tying to the song in the overarching way. So like my dad's conversation, like it was one that I knew I was going to talk to him about like in and out of it and what that means to him. You know, I know I was kind of going in with that kind of agenda. So I was like, okay, let's hit this record and like just talk about it and shit. But like really not kind of stage it, just have conversations like we usually do, you know? So I felt like it was a good kind of like overarching. I think it was a good intro to kind of show like what I was kind of going for sort of in the project, even though it was from like somebody who was like a pastor and all that. There was a sense of truth in it where like we've been so distracted by the world, by like all the shit we got that we don't know how to be in it and not of it. We're in it and of it. We're in it and of it by like, oh, I'm liberal and all this, or I'm conservative and all this, or I'm like very black over here, or I'm very white over here. And like we're just in it and of it of the label where we just don't know how to like really be ourselves, you know. No, we don't know how to loosen up because we're so tied to like this identity and all this shit, you know. And being in it and not of it is like it looks like pacifism. Hate people are like, oh, it looks moderate and all this. Like it's nothing really. It's just I don't really claim shit. I'm just here like observing shit. And like I feel like when you have that like posture, like you don't really care about losing like a label or not being part of a club because you just experience life in its fullness, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the whole.
It's not even really like a political stance by any means. Just simply just stating that, you know, we all have our own sides and we're all kind of.
It's just being. It's funny because I had this. DK was here about I think DK and Andre and
I saw that. Yeah,
they were here about 2 or 3 weeks ago. At the music venue that we have, the spot in Rock Island, and we were kicking it downstairs. And I had this moment with DK. He was talking to me and like. He's kind of talking to me about like what I do. Like he's like, oh, like so what kind of teaching do you do? And I'm like, oh, like I'm an actual teacher. And he's like, oh, so you're saying that I'm not an actual teacher? And like, he's kind of be just funny about it. I'm like, motherfucker, you know what I meant? Like, I was trying to say no shit. Like, I was trying to posture myself, but like at the same time, I'm like, man, like, but on some real shit, like there was kind of like a little like shred of truth of like, man, like I can't, like even in the like more like even the most pacifistic ways, like I can't get tied to that label of being an actual teacher. Cause like if I try to fit into that label, like that's where my ego kind of gets out of place, and that's where I'm in it and of it. That's where I kind of start trying to be a perfect teacher, be perfect this. But if I'm in it and not of it, like if I'm just in being a teacher, but I'm not actually a teacher, I'm just a human being who happens to be over here because y'all hired me. Yeah, right. I don't know what I'm doing here. If I'm just kind of in that spirit of just like not really living in a label, like I'm more of an observer, and I know how to like act in moments according to like how it honors a human like aspect of the person. You know, I'm not looking at them like a textbook case study or an example to something of like, oh, I learned about this kid in this textbook and all this because I'm a teacher, because I'm in it and of it. I'm in the role of being a teacher. I'm of being the teacher. So like they come with all this knowledge and shit, all these rules, like in a really a religious stance, really, like is what I call it. Like they're so tied to these like 10 commandments of teacherism, this 10 commandments of liberalism that like they don't want to break it. But like when you take that stance, that's why I kind of think the story of like Moses is pretty dope, because like when you take that stance of just breaking that tablet and just being a human, like, oh, like fuck this shit, like I would just be a person. I'm gonna be in it and not of it. You're a lot more of a healer to the world, I guess, in a sense, because you're like observing the world. You're not mad at shit. When a kid comes at you, say I'm gonna fight you, get in your face, spit in your face, you're like you're just angry, like, and I feel sorry for you, man. Like I'm not even gonna like be angry and like try to fight you. Like I'm just here like seeing how angry you are and like, damn, that hurts. And when you hit people with that shit, you know, like it's not to make it sound like any like like any kind of like super like out there like yoga type shit, but it's just like it's a real thing. Like we had a situation a couple of days ago where a student had to like leave our school because he was just like overly violent. But like the student, when he was in the hallway being violent and all this, that, and the other, like screaming, cussing, and all this, like some teachers were super intimidated because like he's a big kid and all that. He was a big like 6'5" type kid and all that. So he's intimidating all that. But like for me, like I've been around really intimidating dudes. I've been around dudes who had guns. Oh, damn. Dudes who will like knock your head off with a baseball bat in like a blink of an eye. So like I'm like, he's not one of them. Like I'm not really scared of him. So like out of that, like since I wasn't scared of him, I wasn't in and of it, like of the moment he was kind of building up this anger moment where he's making everybody like respond to this role of being scared, you know, I'm like, man, like this kid's just scared. He's just anxious and all that. So like I say like that to say like having the that's kind of like a part, like a big part of like just in and out of it. And just why I kind of like have those like little snippets of conversations with like my dad and or like other people to kind of show like it's a thing that I'm really kind of like living in, you know, or learning how to live in.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of related to that, all that topic. I'm curious what your thoughts, because you know, you describe like it reminds me of an Earl Sweatshirt verse: too white for the black kids, too white for the too white for black kids, too black for the whites, or something like that.
Yeah, yep. The pendulum swing.
Yeah, yeah. You have a very unique background and unique perspective. I'm curious what your thoughts on like you know, general dogmatism and you know, groupthink, because I feel like those are kind of a lot of the topics that you're touching on in your album and this conversation.
Yeah. You know, like it's one of those things that, like I've kind of like I've told myself like I think for the longest that like I mean like oh like I'm a self thinker, I'm an independent thinker and all this, but like that's not true. Like the things I'm influenced by, it's influenced by a group of people. Like if I'm influenced by Sharon Salzberg, this Buddhist teacher, Richard Rohr, this teacher over here, Howard Thurman, and like I'm attracted to this community of people who have that like thinking outside the box. Like I have a community there too. Like there's nothing wrong with like having like an outpost or a community, but it's just like. And it's like, what is that community kind of like rooted in? Like, is it rooted in like just like rules, following rules, being good at the rules, not really being human? Or does it give like a space for being like imperfect and understanding that you're perfect and like people just kind of like valuing each other out of like just being human, you know? So like for long as I told myself, like, I'm like, man, like I think groupthink is like terrible and all that, but I have a sense of groupthink. The things I think now come from a group that I built up around me, you know? There's nothing wrong with that, but like, the group that I built up around me has made me like a group, like made me more individual who like holds myself accountable for shit. Like doesn't think that I'm perfect and shit like that. Like it doesn't hold me up. I don't have a group of yes men, you know. Yeah, I have people like DK who will make those like subtle like, oh, so are you saying that like I'm not an actual teacher? It's like, no, motherfucker, I'm not saying that. Like I feel like an average person would be like, man, like why are you trying to do that? Like be mad at that. But I'm like, man, like there's a little wisdom in that. Like damn, like I shouldn't really live in that label. So I appreciate that. But like having homies who like kind of facilitate like my kind of movement like that, that's a group think. Like the one thing I'm always wary of is just like why behind it, really, the intention and like what that group think is causing you to be like. And I talk about this often just because like I come from it. It was a thing that I've learned to be in it and out of it now, but I was definitely in it. Like being somebody who was like super involved in like Christian church, like the Western Christian church, you know, from 19 to 25. Like I was in college, like Bible study groups. I was memorizing the Bible. I was reading the Bible every day.
Oh, damn. Yeah.
Praying, like doing all these little things, talking about like super just like theological things with all these people who thought the same way that I did, you know? So like I was in it deep. You know, and then 25, I kind of realized, like, man, like, this is a place that was good for a moment. Like, I don't think I really belong here, you know? So, like, in that, with kind of having that experience, I kind of, like, talk about Christianity the most because, like, I've had that past with it where I know, like, I've known it to be true because I was in it, you know? Like, the group thing that kind of relies on just, like, Christianity kind of, like, is something that, like, I always question, too, because it's just, like, as much of it is, like, saying, like, they're about people who love God, want to represent God, want to be God to people. There's a lot of like conditional shit there still. Like, oh, we're only going to love you though if you're like, if you believe in the same theological thing as us. We're only going to love you if you think hell's a literal place. If you think that we're all sinners, and if you think that Jesus died for our sins, and if you think Jesus was white, if you think that Jesus was this, like, we'll love you then. But brother, like, if you're somebody who is out there listening to that Jay-Z, or if you're out there having premarital sex, I don't think you belong here, brother. And it's just like,
the same people in this day and age that are woke were saying God hates fags 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, though, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm actually an atheist.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have a lot of opinions on dogmatism and, you know, the church. And I think although there are situations where somebody could find something positive in that, I think there is a lot of danger of dogmatism.
Yeah, it's,
you know, like what we're in today with, you know, the political, and, you know, that's kind of thing that changed in my mind the last year, because I always kind of had the mind that the two biggest problems for humanity were class and religion.
Mm-hmm.
But the last year has completely changed. I mean, circumference is dogmatism. I don't really understand what that is for people exactly, because a lot of there are a lot of people in the atheist community that have fallen prey to dogmatism. You know, they have the big A, and it's like they're forming a religion while trying to say that they're, not religious. And, they take a lot of political stances and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a human condition trait that not against me personally, but I feel like I just kind of I never got in that train. I never really got with the group. I've always been kind of my own person. So I've always struggled to understand that, but I feel like, I don't know, there's something that's innately human that is, I think with the age of technology and all that, is just bringing us into this place and we don't really know what to do. Because I understand you can't just like say, hey, there's nothing, you guys there needs to be some kind of structure. But it's a hard line. At what point does the structure become too big and become corrupt, and then we have all these problems? It's just a constant cycle.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like as long as ego lies there, I'm the person who's just like, as long as ego lies there, like there's where destruction is. Like I've heard like the thing I tell people, like my whole thing is like I'm more critical of like kind of like the Western like kind of practice of Christianity, because like it was rooted in ego. It was rooted in like murder. Rooted in
the
like
Crusades,
people.
Man. People forget about the Crusades.
The Salem witch hunts and all that. Like it has a lot of blood on its hands, just like killing people who were like different and all that. So for me, I'm like, I can't trust in this Christianity and say that you like trust this like dogma if it was like by people who like did this shit. Like hell no. Like how can you trust that? Like
I also have a problem with the mass pedophilia that's in the higher ranks of the religious institutions. It's a real problem.
You know what's crazy about that? Like years ago, like when I was in that, I would have been a person who would have defended that and said like, oh, like, well, it's not everybody, it's not this and the other. But it's crazy that like one of my friends who was a part of the church when I was a part of the church, she does like photography and all this now. We had this kind of like interesting relationship where like we both were Christian at the same time, going to this church in Moline, and then like we were in it for like maybe 3 years and then left and all that. So we both experienced the same type of things. But there was a thing where like I won't call church my name, so I'm not as bold as you. I ain't gonna call nobody's names out now. I got positions and I gotta keep in check.
You're good.
But there's a church around here that had a dude working there who like had this like who had like kind of a sexual harassment charge against him, like a legal sexual harassment charge, and like he was like one of the youth pastors around these kids and all that. A youth pastor around kids, like this church let him be a youth pastor around kids. I'm like, yo, I didn't think about how fucked up that was until I was out of it. When I was in it and not of it, you know, actually looking at him like, yo, like I ignored that shit. Like I low key subconsciously ignored that shit and let it be okay. Cause he's like, oh, I'm a sinner saved by grace. God's working on me, but I had this thing that I got off in the past. Like my brain now would be like, motherfucker, like you can't be around these kids. Like take your sick ass somewhere, bro. Like it's like, the fuck you doing? Like hell no. Like in a church let you do this? Oh fuck no. So like I wouldn't say like it's just like this person who was like who I talked about, like who told me this, like that like kind of brought in perspective this having a church. She's saying like this person also like had flirtatious moments with her, and I'm like, yo, like it's one of those things where in the past I would try to defend it, but now I'm looking at it like, yeah, you know what, that church may have been on that shit too.
Yeah, you know the real problem with those religious positions is it's such an easy thing for someone who's sociopathic and a predator to like just fully take on and fully take advantage of all that.
Yeah,
goes with it.
Exactly, man. Like I feel like this is one thing that I've been trying to like kind of like keep in practice of myself, because like I'm still a fairly like spiritual person when like my whole religion right now is just be like there's nothing I don't really disagree with. Like I just got to be present with it and see what it's showing me. Like that's my religion. I don't think it's got really a name to it, but like it's seeing the truth in everything. Like I see the truth in Christianity. I see the truth in Buddhism. I see the truth in atheism. I see these things and like why they're healthy and like why they just allow me to be a whole being, I feel like that's been my religion. Like I've been kind of making it a practice of being okay saying that because like I think like the whole idea of religion because of our like experiences with it, we think it's just a bad thing altogether. But like essentially like when you think about it, I made a Facebook like an Instagram post months ago about it, but just like posing a question of like we all have a religion, like religion in and of it's like in its root word, the Latin word religion means to bind together. It's just anything that you bind together, like things that make you like. If you're atheist, like your religion of just like what your religion is based off of is just like understanding that like there's no like metaphysical being. It's just you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say the only meaning I think there is in life is the meaning that you give it. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something really freeing in it. I think there's something really freeing in realizing that, and I mean, this is all speculative. I don't think anyone can really know, but in my mind, I know that this is my only life. I'm going to die. Mm-hmm. There's something to that that's really freeing in that I'm all, like what you're saying, like in it, not of it. Like you feel more present, you feel more in it. You're more when I feel like it's really easy for people when they think that when they in 100% in their mind know that there's an afterlife and that they're going to be okay, they can let their current life slip. It doesn't really matter,
Exactly. They don't know how to be present with it. And it's crazy as you say that because like there's a sense of spirituality in that,
Yeah.
And that's why I say like that's a religion. It's like it's not a bad thing because like what it makes you be is what kind of like your whole basis and like purpose of life is just to be present in the moment, be present with the shit happening around you. Like you're really to be present with that. Like that's something that like Christian mystics, like Moses the Black and people like the guys that people don't talk about. These guys who are very who are like Christian mysticists, like who like had a very like grounding, like, okay, we believe in God, but God's here in the soil. He's in the person next to me and all that. Like their Christianity look very Buddhism, so it was rooted in what you just say. Like they find their being in like, not in a person in the sky. Like they don't even believe in like a literal heaven or hell. Like they're like, heaven's what we're making it right now, but being present in what's now, So like, that's why I tell people like, I definitely have a religion. Like the religion I've found is just like, just being, just as you say, like just with kind of your thought process, just like being present,
Well, here's a couple of things I'll say about being atheist. I think one of the things that you have to understand being atheist is that religion did play a role in where we came today. I think any atheist that denies that is a moron. They don't fully understand. I mean, there was a time where there were no rules and there was some kind of moral compass that had to be developed, and religion facilitated that.
Yeah.
But I think, for me personally, I feel like in this day and age, with the technology and the, advanced education that we have, people don't necessarily need that to be a good person. One of the things that has always pissed me off is that when people make the assumption that if you're an atheist, you can't be a moralistic person, that you can't have morals. I have viewpoints that are I mean, some people would probably consider really conservative, and most atheists that I know would probably disagree. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's like what we're talking about. Like, there is a dogmatism in everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the people, you need to be able to be a smart and intelligent person to be able to look past that. Second thing I'll mention, not like I am like in a war, like battling, but as an atheist, like the fight in religion is not the people who are religious, it's the institutions.
Yeah, exactly. It's the faculty, not the philosophy. Really.
Yeah, that's if there's something that's malicious about religion, that's why I believe it is.
Yeah.
It's the institutions.
Absolutely.
It's not Grandma Betty who's in a house, like going to a person like that who's really religious and trying to convince them that there's no God.
You're just doing what evangelicals are doing.
Yeah, well, there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing beneficial to that.
No, not at all.
The only thing that is doing is stroking your ego. You're not helping that person. Even if you do manage to convince that person that there is no God, you've shattered their entire reality, and they're not going to know what the fuck to do.
Exactly. You know, there's almost like there's the ego in that. Like you said, like that. That's the one thing that I would say. Like, that's where what you're kind of like saying is like kind of like one thing that I've always like told people to like that I'm wary of, like personally on a level of like I don't really like I try to be a person who's just like who gets his knowledge from being around it and like being observing around people and you know that and being observant of the people around me. Like I feel like a lot of my like Christian background was kind of based off of just like learning theology, learning what do they call it again? Learning apologetics, learning how to defend faith, learning all these like hefty arguments, these theories, and these things of like how to disprove people.
Yeah, memorizing Bible verses, that kind of stuff.
And just all these like different like theories and all this of like how to disprove atheists that God exists, like you're just breaking down science and all this is the other. Like I was always a person who kind of strive for that and all that and like being super knowledgeable and like leaning on my knowledge where like I think now I try to be wary of that and not try to lean on like me knowing shit as to being why I'm like considered a smart person. That's love that you say that. Like I've heard you said in the last couple podcasts I heard like when you were talking to Cub and like David Lopez, like, oh, like dude thinks he's a smart person. That's cool. And I feel like I try to draw my knowledge from just like being present with people. Cause like, I think that's where I'm going to get the most knowledge. Like it's kind of again, being an educator. Like I can bring all the stuff that I learned like statistically about behavioral applied science, learn how to work with kids because of this theory, that theory, because of this pedagogy or learning the zone of proximity, learning all these shits. Like I could be an effective teacher because I'm smart, but I think intellect like that always has a roof. Like it gets to a place where like you can get so grounded in like all the things around us, the information age and all this, where like you kind of let it be a thing where like you almost forget what the human things are. You know, you become like if you're the person who like is the atheist trying to disprove somebody who's like a faith-based person, like you've grounded yourself too much in that religion because like now you think it's so correct that everybody has to abide by it. And I feel like that kind of like misses out of like the spirituality of atheism and just the spirituality to realize anything of just like being able to be in it and be like, wow, like I just know how to be present enough where I just don't even care what my neighbor thinks. Like if they think that God exists, that's what's up. I don't, but that's still dope. And like I'm learning from that, you know?
Yeah. You know, I think being an atheist, you kind of just learn to stop arguing with those people.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like we're talking about dogmatism, we're in a day and age where you could get an argument with someone. You could prove them wrong right there, and they can just say, well, that's your opinion. Mm-hmm. It's like, what? Yeah. No, that's not an opinion. I just did this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's a balance to it, you know, like I tell people, like I try to keep myself in the balance of like, I understand that like there's people who like, we see this age right now of just like the ones who are like, again, we see the David Crowders and then the anti-David Crowders, the ones who are so
Steven Crowder.
I said David Crowder. That's funny. It's funny. Dave Crowder's like a Christian, like contemporary artist. I don't know.
I didn't know that. Huh.
But like you have the Steve Crowders over here and the anti-Steve Crowders. This guy who's so like rooted in like
Steve Crowder and Ethan Klein maybe.
Yeah, just like so grounded in like, oh, I'm gonna find a way to like out argue you. Oh, you called me autistic? All this like that's some bitch shit. Like you just sound like a bitch. Like you're so caught up by like knowing shit and trying to catch people off guard. Like that just made you like over here. But then you have the ones over here. Like what I do honor about him is that he's rooted in like, okay, like there's how things work. Like there's rational things of like, okay, like he says things that like this is like, okay, biologically there's male and female. Like you can't argue with that. Like There's male and female. There's like he provokes thought, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Though he does it in a way that like I don't agree with. I don't agree with just like doing it just to kind of stroke your own ego, just try to prove like you're this big person, you know.
He's definitely a dick about it too. I don't think anyone can deny that.
Yeah, exactly. He's a dick about it. So like there's things that I honor about him and like I'm like, about, but then like the people who are like anti-Crowder, they're all rooted in like this like, oh, nothing exists, nothing's real, there's no objective truth. I'm like, okay, there's a part that I honor about that, just being able to know that like you can kind of like observe things and not.
There's an
take everything with
open-mindedness that like at a root is good, but
the brain falls out.
Yeah,
the brain falls out.
exactly.
Like people get so open-minded that their brain just falls out. It's just like, bro, like you got to have that there though. Like you can't just say like, oh, if I want to be a tiger tomorrow, I'm going to be a tiger. Bitch, you're not a tiger. Like you're fucking human. You know that, right? You can't say it's like, oh well, like it's okay. Like if I want to be a tiger tomorrow, you got to respect that and not like bother me about it, or else I'll cancel you. It's just like if that's your religion, bro. Like that's weird.
I'm taking the time right now to come up as a transracial. I'm a black man.
Yeah,
and my pronoun is African American. I expect you to call me by that.
Yeah. I was gonna say something there. That's like funny. I'm gonna say it.
We don't have to go there.
Yeah, I'll say it later. No, but I try to find myself like I notice these things like as anything as extremes are always dangerous. So I've learned to just be in the middle of it, like honoring, like having a rational, just being able to be grounded in values and all this is the other, and having this like, okay, well, if the value shatter, fuck it, cool. I try to have to stay. I've learned to kind of honor both sides, but let's not try to be on like be on a extreme, like when it comes to my balance of like just thinking about life in general, and like that's what kind of like that's kind of like what kind of defines my way I look at politics, where I'm just like, okay, I'm not gonna look at a side like conservative, liberal. Like I'm just gonna see the heart of like who you are. Like, cause there's some really fucked up liberals out there. There's some really fucked up conservatives. Like I can't fully trust any of y'all. So like I'm really gonna observe both. I'm not gonna claim any of y'all. You know, it's been more healthy where like I don't judge anything on teams. You know. I just, pull truth where I can get it. Yeah,
exactly. Well, they've actually been able to track a lot of like mental, brain chemistry traits, associated with, different political leanings. Like someone who's left, I think it has lower I don't know. But like conservatives have like more conscientiousness. Conservatives have more conscientiousness, and left-leaning people have more open-mindedness. So there's like you give somebody on the right and the left a test, they will more likely show up differently in our brain. So it's really about, I mean, people just need to understand like we're just different people. Like we are made, our chemistry is different. We have different experiences. It's truly the age of the internet where people can just think that they're right.
Yeah, man, that's one thing. Like
I have that problem too, but like I feel like I try to be open-minded,
Yeah, people always try to say like it's social media's made us so divided. It's like no, like social media just showed us who we really are. Like
right.
We're just some like
point.
We're judgmental beings, like in the most destructive sense. Like social media is just like, oh, we're gonna show you how much of a piece of shit you are. Like you're gonna get so religious, you're gonna judge this person or that person. Like it just really kind of revealed that for us. So, like I try to be mindful of that, of like knowing that like when I'm on there, when I feel those yanks of just like wanting to like look at somebody's like judge somebody's like, oh, like this person I have more followers than them, or I got this more, like realize that like I can't blame it on social media. There's something in me that I revealed that I gotta be like, damn, like motherfucker, I'm so judgmental. I'm looking at fucking Instagram numbers like that, like damn, like So I appreciate Instagram for that, but like I feel like people don't notice it or look at it like that, where they just kind of stay judgmental. Like we have those people who have like these vegan based Instagram pages where like, we're all vegan over here. Like if we see Instagrams about meat, we're gonna post on them all the time and shame them. Like y'all some assholes. Like let them eat their meat. Like shit. Y'all the kind of bitches that would judge me if you caught me out when I was down on 2nd Avenue late at night to get some Chinese. Like y'all would pop up like, we thought you were vegan. No, I'm plant-based. I eat more plant-based. There's a whole religion behind that, so I feel like people are not aware of how tribal it makes them,
Yeah. What? I don't know. There isn't really an answer for this, but do you see a way out of this?
No.
All this,
bro. This project I'm working on is called "And This Is Where We Die." Because I'm like,
damn.
Like, at this, like, it's a concept I came with last year during the pandemic, which is realizing that, like, man, like, we just all gonna die here. Like, it's gonna happen. Like, no matter if you conservative, liberal, all that, like we all gonna die. We're gonna be the same ground, dying, rotting flesh, and we ain't gonna mean shit when we gone. Like it kind of has this dark side to it. Just like looking at it's kind of like my whole like it's dualistic where like there's a sense of like optimism behind it, but there's a whole sense of shit too. Like where like last year, I talk about it a lot. Like I think I talked about it like podcasts that I've been on or like and stuff like they've been on. But like 2020, like I'm thankful for it, but I'm also like it was a year where I went through like my worst mental breakdowns, like my most like kind of feeling like super just like on like defense from people, like you know like with everything going on with like being isolated already like physically and then having shit like George Floyd happen and then having like shit like Breonna Taylor happen and having like people just going like fucking crazy. It's just like, man, like,
yeah,
we're all fucking nuts. Like we're not as advanced as we think. Like we gonna die. Like I went to like through this like very like mental thing of just like not trusting anybody around me. Like just being like just to myself, just being very just kind of like anxiety heightened and all that. And just kind of like under this guys are like really feeling like, man, like I'm gonna die here. Like I can go outside tomorrow and get like called a nigga and get boop by like some crazy ass person, or I could have somebody go on a drive by because they're mad at what happened with Breonna Taylor and they don't know how to they don't know how to process their mental health. And like I'm gonna have a drive by and just see me and like I'm gonna shoot that motherfucker because I'm mad. Boom. It's just like, man, like I can die through anyway because everything's burning down around me. Holy shit, you know. And so I went through all that mental period, but like as I went to like therapy and shit and like started like practicing more like Buddhism, mindfulness, and like just being present with myself, I realized like, man, like it's okay because I'm gonna die, like, but regardless of how I die, like I can choose to like, there's a haiku that I'm gonna open up with this piece with that's gonna be big overarching, like kind of like a poem that I repeat in this piece, but the poem is a short haiku and I say, and this is where we die, either by or against will, this is where we die. Like I can either die by my will, like by the power of just realizing like, hey, that shit don't go, no shit got hold of me. Cancel culture can't fuck with me. Conservatives can't fuck with me. Like pro-black people who say I'm not black enough, you can't fuck with me because I'm the shit. Like, bitch, at what I do. There's kind of this braggadociousness to it, you know, just like just being so rooted in who I am. I was just like, I don't care about what's bothering me. Like, I'm gonna be me at the end of the day. I'm not gonna let this seeing another black death happen make me be like, oh, like I gotta be a victim again. Or see this shit happen over here and be like, oh, I gotta stay defensive again or get hurt by this person. Be like, oh, I gotta be in defensive. It's like, you know what, like I know how to sit with it now. Like I can either die that way and die in that's what heaven is to me. Like just being in a place where you don't have a worry. You don't let shit like fuck with you as much as you would, you know. Or you like live and die against your will. Like when you're dying against your will, you die by ego. Like, cause like when you die, like if I was somebody who was rooted in being a teacher, like having that rooted in my identity, let's say 50 years from now, like I'm slowly dying and all that, haven't retired because I love teaching and all that, and I start worrying like, oh fuck, I'm a teacher. So like if I die, these kids are not gonna have a teacher anymore. Like if I'm die, like oh my gosh, like this is hell. Like I don't want to die yet because my mission's not done because I rooted so much of my fucking ego in being a teacher that like now my death is like against my will because I'm like I don't want to die anymore, and so I'm holding on to life with this big ego and all this and that other. Like if I die that way, like I'm gonna live that way too. You know, like if I've learned that like me living in this sense of just like knowing that I'm going to just die and like knowing that like death is possible, like any kind of hour, like, you know, any kind of second, whether it's like physical, mental, emotional, like it's always there. Like I've learned to just sit with it and let that like transform me where like I'm not so dependent on like the people around me. I'm not dependent on like America to be less racist. Like, oh, like I'm going to protest this. America's going to be less racist. Like, no, America's always going to be racist.
Yeah.
We going to die here. Like, it's like you can protest all you like. It's again, people hate this.
Yeah, that's always been my thought too.
People hate this. Like, people hate this part of it because like I'm like, man, like we all going to die. Like, it's like racism existed forever. It's existed forever. Like all the protests and all that. Why are we worrying about that and trying to worry about convincing people to like be less racist and not just like making our own communities around us less racist by just talking to our neighbor, being with our neighbor who's conservative, sitting with them, being with them, and just showing like, damn, like this is a cool ass person. Like I want to be like this person, just like emanating that, you know. We get so caught up in like the titles and all that. So it's just like when you can choose your death, you know. So like I think for me, I learned that heavily like in this past pandemic. I don't even know why how I jumped on the tangent of like the death and all that, but like there's kind of like this thankfulness I've found and just like understanding that like, yo, I'm just gonna die. So like I just know how to be present with shit, you know.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way to think about it. Are you familiar with like the blue pill, red pill
kind of stuff?
I've heard about it. I haven't really got into it.
Not to get into it, but there's like in the red pill mind, there's a white pill and a black pill of the red pill. The black pill is like the more like the nihilistic, like we're screwed, like, and then the white pill is kind of like, everything's gonna crumble, but it's gonna be a good thing because we're gonna rise from the ashes and we're gonna create something new. It's, I don't know. It's a really complex question, figuring out, how we're gonna all figure that out.
Yeah.
Like talking about like racism. Like, I was listening to a Howard Stern bit, and because his assistant's black lady. I'm not sure what her name is, but I don't watch it that much.
Yeah.
But she was talking about like, the N word died before hip hop brought it back. It like almost died before hip hop brought it back. It's kind of it's an interesting. I don't know. It all seems very picky choosy almost.
Yeah, exactly. And just like it's like to like with that said too, like with what you were asking too, which is like if I think we're gonna get out of this, I'll tell you like I don't think we're gonna get out of it in the way that we think. Like I don't think it's gonna be like a collective thing. Like I think like for me, I've built a community around me, a small community of just people who like know how to like, man, look at things different. Like we don't have to depend on this or that and the other. We can depend on ourselves. And like once we depend on ourselves, we know how to like reciprocate that around us, It's not gonna change the whole world. There's still gonna be racism, but like for me, I've just learned that like if I'm creating those communities around me, like I'm always gonna emanate that in some type of way. And like maybe it'll change somebody, maybe it won't. Like that's just up to the person, but like that works for me now. So like collectively, I just don't think if it happens, it ain't gonna happen for like 3,000 type years. So like people like are actually like realize like how dumb we are trying to like build that shit over again,
Yeah, I think the positive thing is we were just talking about like crypto. Like there's a lot of decentralization happening. And I think that will help with like the group thinking, the dogmatism, that kind of stuff. While we're on the topic of race, I'm kind of curious, what do you feel like do you think that the institutions themselves are racist? Do you think people inherently are racist? Where do you think that stems from? In terms of like being a black man dealing with racism day to day, what do you think that is?
I think it's something we're just built on. I think like for me, like when I think about racism and all that, like it kind of goes into like why I don't see it like being a thing that's gonna like end anytime soon. Like it's just like we're just built on it. It's just like it's literally like in the DNA of like what we've kind of like taken to be as like Western Americans, and it's been so contagious where like people who would say like there's a community of people who hate white people who are racist who say like, oh, we're not racist, we just hate racist white people. But those same people have this kind of racism that's like, oh, but if I see an interracial relationship, I'm gonna make fun of that. If I see a white black man at a white business, I'm mad at that. Like you have this super like wokeness there too. So I'm like, man, like it exists. Like I feel like it exists like everywhere to the point where like I think racism like is one of those things that's like it's just so deeply rooted in what America is like. In every kind of like where it's affected everybody, like where we're all that. It's not just all white people, but like white racism has been the thing that kind of like made black racism exist. Just realizing that like it's closely tied, like into like who we are. Like it's made me more conscious of like when I'm being like having like ideas that are just like, man, I don't work at this school because it's a bunch of white people, but like and be like, man, like why do I think that? Because for the longest, like I've never seen like a black teacher because of like where I've been built, and like so I'm building this whole idea off of like a racism that I was given. I've created this like alternate counter racism of like, oh, like I don't like these white people, but I'm like because I'm black in here, I've tried to like be mindful of just like how some of my racism has been like crafted by the racism I've received, and I feel like that's the biggest. It's one of those things, like I said, like I don't think people think like about that and think about like how like even pro-blackness has a racism to it, almost of like where I don't completely fit in like the ideology of like what pro-blackness is because it's very like still anti-white. As much as they don't say it is, like there's a part of that it is,
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I think Black Lives Matter and all that. It's dogmatism, just like any other group. I've had various people ask me about that. And I'm just like, I think racism is a thing, and I think it's a problem. But I don't support that group.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's kind of like it promotes for me like, and it's not to say that everybody's like on this like it's very nuanced where there's people who are like Black Lives Matter like have a human like perspective of it, but like
it just seems like a lazy way for a white person to be like, I'm not racist.
Oh yeah, and those people end up being like the racist ones. Like I told you,
Yeah, they would never go get a drink with a black guy. You know what I mean?
I've told you in the past where like I had that run in at like Barnes and Noble with like the white woman who saw me looking at books in social studies and like
yep,
try to look next to me and all that. Like that's racist. Like you just judged that I was here to do this. Like you want to show how in it you are. You didn't even like that's there's a racism in that. Like almost just like where you're just kind of like oh, I'm gonna like approach this black male like and show that I'm reading black books too to show that I'm not racist. It's like
again, ego.
Yeah, it's all
that's the only reason that person did that.
Exactly. Exactly.
They don't care about you. They're not trying to make your life easier. They're trying
they want to they want to feel good about themselves. They want to know that they feel good about themselves. Like and it's one of those things again. Like it goes to show like how deeply like embedded racism is. Where like people who are trying to undo racism sometimes are like becoming racist themselves. Too,
oh
in weird ways.
Yeah.
It's just like one of those things. Like man, like that's why I've kind of just learned to like honor like parts of it that are good and human, but like be like man, like I still see a problem and just like the thought process altogether. But
yeah, one of the things that I find, I don't know, maybe we've talked about this before, but like white people who hate themselves for being white, that shit annoys the fuck out of me. It's like,
yeah,
I like, fine. I guess you can, if you want to hate on yourself, be my fucking guest. I don't give a shit. But like it's like the same it's the same exact thing as you saying, hey, I don't like that person because he's black. Like you're doing the same thing to yourself. And it's not like, I had a friend, he was just like, yeah, you know what? There are just sometimes where I just hate being white. I'm like, dude, you're not a racist person. You're like, I know you. You're not a bad person.
Yeah.
Why are you letting this like, cause you turmoil? Just be yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I saw this YouTube video. I forgot the name of it. I got it. When I find out, I'm gonna send you a link. But there's this guy who this like white guy from the UK. I think he does this like interview with people at like this porn convention. It was just super weird. Like I was watching out of interest, like just seeing like who is he interviewing at this place? Like who the fuck is he talking to? And there's this person that he interviewed, this lady who had this white dude who was on a dog chain, and she said like, oh, I love black people, and I want to make this white dude kiss all the black people's feet.
Oh wait, was that I know what you're talking about. All Gas No Breaks?
I think so.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, the AVN convention thing. That video is fucking hilarious.
Yeah, and she had this white dude walks this black dude and like kiss his shoes. I'm like, yo, that's weird as fuck. Like that's that white masochism. Like, oh, I hate being white because I hate being white. I'm gonna make you hate being white, and you're gonna kiss this black dude's feet. Like that's that's low key racist still, right?
It's funny. Like the porn industry is one of like the most anti-racist, industries that you can get in. I feel like because it's also out in the open. Like like your BBC and your whatever. That. Even see, like white people saying the N-word in those videos. And like, it's just like, it does not even like, and I'm not saying that's a good thing, but like, it just shows us to how like comfortable they are with each other. Like, it's not even like they're all just kind of porn stars and they're all fucking each other. And that's kind of just their job, I'm not saying that that's good, but it's just, it's an interesting, it's interesting that they're all get along with that. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a different dynamic.
No, I feel you. Crazy, like, actually, just off of that, too, because I feel like it's a good follow-up, too, because it's something I've been thinking about as of lately, too, like, when it comes to just, like, understanding that religion is a good thing and, like, having values is, like, a good thing to kind of, like, have a discipline in. Like, I've been thinking a lot about, like, you've heard of Jubilee, right? That whole, it's that weird, like, channel that's, like, the whole, like, Christians and atheists have conversations together. People in the porn industry and people who are Christians.
That does kind of sound familiar. It's really curated and not.
It's a bitch ass YouTube channel. Yeah, it has some shit that was interesting. But it's a bitch ass channel. Like y'all too safe. Like y'all too safe. But they had this episode where like they had like people who are of the faith community having questions with people who are like working in the porn industry, and like I was listening to both conversations, and I'm like, man, like. I think both sound like equally ridiculous. For me, because I'm like, I realized like I've been okay becoming a person who was like in the concept of what we're talking about, like porn wise, like being like obviously I was somebody like I viewed porn and like I've had my narratives was just like having that thing of like understanding like my like the condition, how conditioned it is like for me to be stuck in that and all that. I've done like a lot of hard work of like understanding that and like why it's unhealthy for like my like kind of makeup personally, but like I've learned to be okay with just like being like, man, I just don't think like it's healthy for a person, you know, just like to be like to see just like I feel like what it does. I think for me, like just knowing the narratives that I know about myself and like other people who I've known who've like been stuck in it, like knowing the narratives is kind of creative, like how it made us like dehumanize people more and be more like okay, like be more like isolated and like dehumanized, you know, like it's been one of those things of like, man, like I don't know if it like I have people on the other side of it like who are like, oh, well, like I think porn's like it's good, like it's sex work should do positive work. They like teach people about sex and all this is the other, and I'm like, man, like, but do they though? Like, does any porn star go into a job being like, oh, when I fuck this dude, like I'm gonna show everybody how a clitoris work? Like that is not your like. You're
Describe
not going,
a situation in the workplace where you had to use teamwork. Well,
it's just
there were 5 guys at my door. I had to satisfy all of them.
It's just
a lot
like
of teamwork went into that.
exactly. It's just like there's nobody in that job who's going in there for educational purposes. Like they going in there to make their money.
Yeah,
and to fuck.
yeah.
Like that. Like we're just gonna be honest with that. Like I ain't gonna judge it. Like cool, if that's your thing, that's your thing. But like I think it's a thing where it's like it's. I feel like I've grown to be a person who's like, man, like I don't know if it's like, and maybe you can give your thoughts too. Like, but like I don't know if it's the thing that I can get behind. You know, again, like working with kids who are like, again, who are so. Like have this mind that's like very sexually like wired because of like what they experienced growing up. Maybe they're like experienced porn. Maybe they experienced like certain things going on that made them addicted to porn. I'm just like, man, like with how I see it affect people and kids, like I don't know if I can get fully behind it and know how it's affected me, you know, but
Yeah, I think I don't like it being I wouldn't even say I don't like it. I think the normalization of it's a problem. However, I do acknowledge that I think it's just a reality. I mean, we've decided to go down this road of technology. You know, it's been 20 plus years of porn.
yeah,
You know,
sure.
in that realm. I mean, I think we're just gonna have to start having those uncomfortable talks sooner and sooner with our kids. Which I think that could have problems with it potentially if it's not done correctly. But that may. I don't know. It's a question. Is that better? Even if that's an awkward conversation, is that still overall better than them discovering that and then getting a bad idea? Because not to get too personal, but like I felt like for me, my parents did not do a very good job explaining the whole sex talk and all that. And I did get exposed to pornography pretty young myself. And yeah, I mean, I think it does have an effect. But I mean, I think it's like with anything. You know,
absolutely. Yeah,
you get exposed to it. I'm not a fan of censorship. I think the best way that you can, raise a child or educate or something is to just do, you need to let them out into the world and they need to figure it out. And even along that path, if they have bad things happen or if they, get in some uncomfortable situations or something, I ultimately believe that person's going to be better off than the person who, is helicopter parented, sheltered, doesn't experience anything until they're, far beyond, and then they feel like they're just kind of catching up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel that. I feel like I've even thought about again. I think it's just because like I'm getting older too. Like I turn 30 next Saturday. I mean next month, which is crazy because like when Cub said he was 22 on your podcast, I'm like, damn, makes you old as shit. Like that kid is.
I thought he was way older.
Fuck. I'm like, it makes, yeah, I did too. I was like, I feel old as hell. Like, I'm turning 30 next month, but like, I think like just turning 30 now, like, I think maybe it's contributed to something like with growing older, but like, I've been thinking about like partnership a lot more of just being like, okay, like, I think I'm ready for just like, if like, I'm going to be like a little bit more like conscious of that. If it's like looking at the people around me and like seeing who like I really want to build like a partner, like be like partners with and all that. But like being in that mind frame, like I've been thinking about like things of just like if kids happen in the future and all that, and like how I would like kind of like be a teacher in moments like that, like when it comes to like porn and all that. Like I feel like because of just being somebody who's educated and like work with kids and all that and just like knowing the effects of things, I think I'd always be that person just like have that conversation as soon as like I know he would like be able to understand, like maybe a couple years before he gets to that place of like sex, like just being like, yo, like in the next couple of years, like this is gonna happen. Like you're gonna go through puberty and all that. You're gonna see girls like you grow a little bit more breasts and all this. Like you're gonna feel some type of way. Like we can have conversations about that. I was there, and like I know exactly what that feels like, and like I made my fuck ups, and I just want to make sure you don't make your fuck ups. If you go out and fuck on somebody, like you make the decision, but like I want you to at least know that we had this conversation, you know, like
Yeah.
So I can think when it gets to it, like when it gets to like the porn conversation, I think like it'd be the same thing of like, man, like if you slip into it, man, like there ain't no judgment, like I ain't gonna hurt you, like if I find you're looking on it, like we'll just talk about it, like talk about like what got you into it, like why you're doing it and all that, because like maybe I can pull from mine and be like, okay, like when I thought that this is what got me stuck there and all this is the other, like because I think for the most part, like it's giving them the freedom to like know that like if they make a mistake, they ain't gonna get judged for it, but like know like how the like what path this will possibly take, you know, and like be like you can choose at the end of the day, but we have this conversation that's cool, you know. So like it's one of those things where like stuff like that though, people say like they hate it because it's seemingly rooted in values or something like that, you know, like oh like you have values, oh that's a terrible thing, like that's it's like bitch, we all have values, you know, like
That's a terrible thing. What the hell?
it's like, you know, it's just one of those things. It's just like I've just noticed people are so scared of values. Like motherfucker, we all have values in this sense, but it's just like if you have values like not fucking with like porn, it's just like you don't have to be an asshole about it, you know. It's just like you can have that value and be that, but like I think I've been letting myself have that more like permission of just like, man, like if I have values, that's an okay thing. I know I'm not gonna be judgmental to a person about it, and if I am, I'm gonna check myself about it because I've already built it up in myself, you know. I ain't gonna slip. I'm always gonna know like, hey, I was an asshole there. I should apologize.
Yeah, for sure.
It may take a couple of days and all that, but like I think like just being able to have those like boundaries, you know, for myself and like being able to like be a teacher in that, like I think that's like the best way I think of just like approaching that when I get to a place of like parenthood and knowing how technology is gonna grow and all that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's ultimately what all you can do. You just gotta wait to that point. So I was just over at your crib.
Yeah,
in Davenport, and you guys have a like a print setup.
Mm-hmm.
What's all going on with that? I saw you started doing some merch.
Yeah, we're still working on. Yeah, we're actually making a lot of plans right now. Like nothing's set in stone, but we're definitely planning on all using that motherfucker for sure. Just like we're definitely planning like more like just with me having this in and out of it brand. Like the way I kind of started, like I've been learning a lot from my mistakes. Is like I felt like I started that business and like I didn't like I kind of just jumped in. I'm like, okay, I don't know much about this. Like, I'm going to jump in, make mistakes, boom. Because I've never sold, like, stuff like that or, like, been conscious of that or, like, how that world works. Like, I've made a whole bunch of mistakes, you know, in that. And, like, the transition, which I'm learning now, like, trying to get into now, is just, like, doing everything, like, on my own, really. Like, not really depending on, like, people who are, like, videographers, like, shoot commercials, like, these really good-looking commercials or depending on, like, this person to make the shirts and all that. Like I think I'm finally building like a team around me of like being able to like do things off of my house. So like that print's gonna be a big part of just like in and out of it. Like I'm gonna be able to make more like shirt designs and all this, and like Preston's gonna have his merch set up and all that. Like there's gonna be some crazy stuff happening with it for sure. Like I'm excited for it because merch is like that's something that I feel like I've learned from my mistakes enough of like doing it with like whatever with in and out of it that I can really like okay. I know how to tackle this, how to really make people drawn by the brand or like what we're trying to do. So it's definitely something that's gonna help with like art wise for sure.
Yeah, well, I've thought about that myself, both for podcasting. It's a different medium, a different way to get your shit out there. You know, it's effective.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. It's made me. I have a lot of plans for it. Like, and that's one thing that like I appreciate it. This is one thing I appreciate about like having like school at this point. Like, yeah, like I have a lot of fucking debt. But that's going to get forgiven after I teach for 5 years, you know, like under the loan forgiveness. But like the fact that I'm able to have like income where I can invest more into these things over here, like because I get paid on salary now, like I have a lot more money at my disposal where I could throw literally hundreds of dollars here on like ink that we need for like our shirts and all that.
Oh, wow.
And then I can make a thing of like working with Preston and like have it like a 70-30 split or something, you know, because he's at home all the time. Like I'll be able to have a budget where I can like pay him out of that and like have somebody like making the business grow, you know. I'm really grateful having like a little salary, quote unquote. I don't believe in the term. I'm just using it for the sake of it. Big boy job that kind of like makes me do my little kid stuff. It's like the big boy jobs let me do little kid stuff. Like I can have fun. Like, hey, make 100 shirts and put it on Instagram, and we're gonna sell 5 today. You know, it's again like it's a whole like that's kind of been my whole like response like this past year, just like learning how to build my own shit, not depending on shit around me, not depending on like nonprofits by white folks who want to be like white apologists who are saying, "Oh, we'll work with you because you're black, and we'll give you grants." Like, no, like because you're gonna want something out of that. You want some kind of accolade or want some kind of respect.
Yeah.
Like we're just gonna work by ourselves. Like, if you want to work with us, cool. Come to us. And like, if you're really about supporting black businesses, you'll put your money in our black business.
Yeah.
And we'll work together. And shout out to Quad City Arts, because they've been really the big homies and doing a lot of that. Like, they've been authentically like helping me out, like financially, and like expanding my like my art influence for sure. They've been the homies. Quad City Arts for sure.
Fuck yeah. No, we've been around here today, and it's a cool little community. Yeah, it's big and spread out, and it has an interesting vibe to it. So
yeah, there's so many different cities. Like, we were in like the little Mexico of East Moline, like East Moline and all that, like at the studio, and then we came over here, which is just like it's
downtown
like
lights and all
looking
that.
like downtown Chicago or some shit.
Yeah. This is trippy as hell right now, doing this podcast with the street view.
Yeah, it has an energy about it. Like, I tell people all the time, like, people always talk about Chicago this, Chicago that. Like, the Quad Cities is like, it's little Chicago. Like, I like it. Like, I can go out there and there's stuff to do. And like, me being an introvert, I know at the end of the day I can go home and not be flooded by people. Like, I love it. Like, I really, as much as shit the Quad Cities gets, like, I love it because like, it's just how diverse it is. Like, I can be over here, in like the completely different places.
Yeah.
Dope space. Even though I do know I do plan on moving soon for sure. Like I said, after this master's program, probably.
Hell yeah.
Probably.
What about your podcast? What's been going on with that? So, you just did a panel, right? Like 2 weeks ago or something like that?
We did this COVID conversations through like a grant that we got through Art Alliance and all that. They give us $1,500 that we pretty much put in the business to do this podcast episode, just talking about COVID. And
that's cool.
They wanted us to like create it with the purpose of like trying to convince people to get like vaccines. And I'm like, okay, we ain't gonna do that. But what about we have people who are vaccinated and unvaccinated and have a conversation about it? Like, the people who are, they're gonna do their promoting about it, but we're gonna have a conversation about it. And like, so we did this episode about it and all that, and it was dope.
It's good that they were willing to do that, because I feel like a lot of people that would say that and be like, oh no, you got to do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been dope. Like, it's been one of those things too. At the same time, where like, I think I was kind of like talking to you about it, but like, I've kind of like noticed how much like it's kind of the Black Thoughts podcast has grown to be an entity that's dope, and it allows me to do really dope things. Like, as an intellectual, talking to intellectuals, we talk about talking to like educational professionals, teachers, like people who are like licensed like mental health counselors and all that. But it's kind of turned into one of those things where like, in the space that I'm at, when it comes to like what I value nowadays, just like, I just value just being. Like, I don't really care about things that have a whole bunch of like head knowledge. Like, I want to have real conversations. I think it's kind of turned to one of those things where like, that's why I've kind of been like, the thing I talked to you about earlier about like the biz tapes that we're working on. Like, that podcast is going to be kind of like what the Black Thoughts podcast is always going to be a podcast I'm still working with and kind of just like doing hosting for. But like, there's going to be other hosts who are like more so fit that mold. But like, I've been more like interested in doing like podcasts that are just about like just real conversations, like not filtered, not feeling as if like I gotta have like this professional thing going on where I only talk to professionals, only speak with professionals, because like that affected a lot of like why me and you didn't get our podcast on there, because of like the management there is just like, oh, we want these type of people and all that, and I'm like, okay, but like I want to talk to the peoples too. I just don't want to talk about the people who have like PhDs and doctorates and masters and all that. I want to talk to the real people,
So you want something just a little more freedom per se.
Yeah, yep.
Just direct creative decisioning.
Mm-hmm. That emerges like these conversations, just like conversations like this that are like not so like trying to like prove a point wrong or like so like just trying to be more intellectual, but just like ones that are just like, okay, we're gonna talk about this shit. Like, I'm gonna talk about this, you talk about this, and like we're gonna have a conversation. We're gonna learn from it, and we know that when people hear it, they're gonna learn from it. I think it's the best kind of learning.
Yeah.
Well,
honestly, you could. I feel like you can always. I feel like you can always tell when there's a podcast that has a clear message or an intent versus like just a conversation. You can tell when it's like, here's a message that we want to put out, and this is how it's gonna work.
Exactly, and like those have their place, but I think like sometimes like for me it's just too for me, like there's people that like can do that and do it well. Like, there's podcasts that do it well, but like I think for me, for like where I've kind of been like feeling myself in my life, I'm like, man, like I want to just have more real conversations, like whether it's right or wrong. Like, I want to just get somebody's perspective and like have people sit in those kind of conversations, because like those, when people realize, like, kind of like witness this type of conversations, like I feel like people like know how, like, I feel more like able to have them with people that they disagree with. Hopefully, you know, if they see it modeled, you know, it's the whole like being modeled of what it looks like, and maybe people will like be more willing to.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing to deal with when you're podcasting. You know, I feel like when I'm doing a podcast and I have a moment where, you know, I'm interacting with the person, we might.
Oh, I think he's just entering. You're good.
Oh, okay. I feel like when we I lost my train of thought.
Oh, you good?
Let me backtrack here. What the fuck were we just talking about? I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. We're having a conversation. We were just what was that? It was just something.
Sorry, fucking ADD, man.
I got ADD too.
Oh, wait. Yeah, I remember now. Okay. When we do, you know, when you do a podcast and you have someone with an opposing view, you have to kind of gauge like how much they know and how, you know, how relevant the conversation is.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're talking about with the Black Thoughts podcast. Yeah, it's one of those things where like I've noticed this value because like I'm a person who values like knowing stuff, like being able to be like kind of weigh my options. Like, okay, is this real? Like, I got to find the objective truth here and all that. But like, I've learned that like I think I'm on the side of just trying to balance, just having conversations, not really like knowing what I believe, but not being so like, man, like I got to bring this up in some point in the conversation to like show that like my point's right, but like just sit with conversation, you know. So like, Black Thoughts podcast is like turned into like being a little bit more like on the side where we're trying to like reach people who are intellectuals. We're trying to find like people who are like a part of that, which like again like I'm following that like that's where I'm gonna still be hosting this podcast there, but like being on the side of just like just having conversations that are real conversations. I'm like, man, like I feel like it balances out that like being intellectual here and just being and just having conversations about stuff that we're thinking in the moment, you know.
Yeah. It's an interesting art form, you know. I love what I do here, and I've always tried to create an environment where people feel like they can just talk about whatever, you know, no censorship, nothing like that, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Just if you have an opinion. Yeah, I've had people come on and say the craziest fucking shit ever. You know, we have a witch coming on next week, and like, I don't, you know, I don't know if I'll tell her, but I probably don't believe anything that she, you know, that she believes or practices, but I still think that
there's value in it.
Yeah, sure. There's definitely value in it.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I want to give anybody an opportunity to be able to do that kind of stuff. I'm curious because I don't know, maybe we can edit this out. Now, are you able to talk about vax?
Oh, yeah, I can talk about vax.
Okay.
I want to be able to talk about vax.
Oh, I just didn't know, just because you said you had your pod.
Oh, yeah, no, I got vaccinated.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Vaccinated. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that you probably kind of, I don't know. Well, I don't know how you feel about it, but I mean, school probably pressed you into that quite a bit. Huh?
I mean, they talked about it and like, they didn't really force us. So like, it was always that they always like recommended it and all that. And like, you're around like people who are like, again, like super worried about like, oh, like if you're not vaccinated, I'm gonna freak the fuck out. I'm gonna be scared and all that. And like, I get it, but that's not me. I ain't gonna be scared of that. So like, I feel like for me, like why I got it was just the more so like, I wasn't afraid about getting COVID and all that. Like, and not to say it isn't real. Like I've seen it. Like I have homies in the hospital right now who have like been hit by COVID and all that.
Oh,
I've like had
geez.
people who've like died in the last like week who had COVID and all that, family, friends and stuff like that. So like it's real.
Fuck.
But like I never really feared for myself with it. And I think because like again, like 2020, there's a lot more things I had be afraid of about dying than a fucking virus. It's like I got a lot more like to be afraid of than a virus. Like y'all the virus, y'all the corona. Like I'm trying to find a vaccine from y'all. Like it's like fuck the virus. But like with that, I was never really like afraid of the vaccine or like I was always pro-choice in the matter. Like if you get it, dope. If you don't get it, dope. Like just know the repercussions of both things. Like you ain't completely safe if you get the vaccine because you don't know what's gonna happen years from now. Yeah, like those things are still not known, you know. And you just gotta sit with that. You gotta know that's the truth and know that you're not completely like rid of COVID. There's people who died who got the shot, you know. Yeah, the likeliness of that is like 12 times like of happening is very, very slim, but it still happens, you know. You gotta sit with those things, you know. There's no absolute, like you gonna die either way, you know. So like for me, because I wasn't afraid of dying, I'm like, okay, like, why do I want to get it? And I'm like, man, like, just peace of mind. That's the only reason why I want. Like, if I get this, I'm not gonna have to worry about like what Miss Karen over here thinks is gonna affect my peace of mind. And people would say that like, oh, are you just being weak minded? Okay, motherfucker, I'm weak minded. Like I'll say it, like that shit will affect my work. Like I'm not like I won't give a fuck about it, but it's always gonna be back in my head that this person's gonna like look at me in this type of way. So I'm like, man, if that's gonna fuck with my peace of mind, let me just get this joint then. You know, get it, because I'm like I know I'm gonna be good after I get it. You know, like. And it's just for the sake of just like not having to worry about like being like bothered, I guess, about it. Cause like we're all I think at some point, like a lot of us are gonna have to get it at some point. Like what? Not even like if it's pushed, but just like if we're smart and we see people around us dying closer to us, we gonna get that bitch.
Yeah.
Like, or if we get it and we just survive, we're gonna get that, like for sure. You know.
Yeah. Well, and if I think. Personally, if enough time passes and maybe the people who are, creating the vaccine can have a little more, credibility, then I think maybe more people would be, myself included, would be more inclined to it. But
absolutely.
No, I appreciate, the conversation that your podcast had. I thought it was really, I didn't know that about, the government testing vaccines on, blacks. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, yep, yeah. It was the thing. It really was. Yep. And that's the thing. Like, it's like I understand when people are like creeped out about it, because like just having that, like where you testing out on like animals, it's just like it brings people's remembrance of like, I don't know, like again, like people who are like thinking about Tuskegee and all that. Like people say like, oh well, that happened whatever forever ago. Like the repercussions were different. It's like, well, there was still like a distrust there, It's like when you hear that says that on animals like that, it's just like, man, like this is weird, So I get it. I definitely get it, And some people are worried. Some people are ready to fight to the end of their life to not get it and protest. I'm like, well, you got that energy, cool. I don't.
Yeah.
Let me just get this shot because I don't want to deal with no crazy motherfuckers in my face.
Well, yeah. We don't need to talk about this in depth because I think everybody's sick of it, but. I think, it goes all back to dogmatism and, the side with the ego. All these things are playing into the backs right now. It's just an extension of it.
Exactly. You see two egos. You have the anti-vax ego and the vaxxer ego. Like, they're just, they're trying to fight each other now. It's just like, goddamn, like, y'all created a new type of, like, racism or something. Like, you guys have, like, anti-vax only signs over your restrooms and shit. And have an anti-vax bus boycott.
The vax bar found, the anti-vax bar found.
Brown horses board of vaccination. We got to integrate the black kids that was vaccinated with the white kids that was vaccinated. It's like, y'all are ridiculous. Like, y'all are trying to make anything a fight. Damn. Anything.
Yeah. One more question on this topic. Do you worry about the vaccine mandates and that like affecting us?
Not really. I don't really care about it. I think like it doesn't really bother me. Like I see why people get bothered, but like I'm like, man, like I don't know. I think that the more you feed into it, I think like the more it just makes it like for me, like I understand the circumstance of it. Like as much as people hate it, like I mean, like there was a virus that came here. Like the government's response was to make this vaccine. Yeah, it was short time. Yeah, like. It's in the midst of craziness. Yeah, like the government ain't worth being trusted, but like some things you gotta just be able to like say like the government has done some good things like that we can trust. It's just like, man, like okay, like maybe I can trust the government this time. Like y'all done some fucked up shit in the past, but you know what? I'm in an abusive relationship with you at this point. Like you hit me sometimes, call me a whore, and you help me out some days. Like I'll just trust this. So it's just like one of those things where like. I understand that like it's coming from a good place of just like it's just a response to like something that happened. So I'm like, man, like the mandate I get it that like some people get too religious about it, but again at its core it's just like these people who are like pushing it and like encouraging it are just like wanting to see a normal world, though a normal world's not going to come back, but they want people to be able to be out amongst each other and like have this human connection again, so I don't get bothered by it. I get it. There's people who have their dogmatism about it, but I'm like, man, at this point, it's just going to exist. Like, y'all exist. Y'all are always going to be dogmatic as long as you live by ego. I can't keep trying to convince folks of that,
Yeah. I mean, I guess ultimately what we, like we've been saying in and out of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I struggle with I wish I had your fortitude and your attitude about all this, because I tend to get really worked up and upset privately.
Oh yeah, I just let the house. It's funny because like Isaiah Rashad's project, the house is burning. Like I feel like that's like something that I meditated on a lot last year too, with like the project of like, and this is where we die. Like just realizing like the place to like my house is burning right now. Like the place that I found so much security in it's burning down. And like I feel like my 42 just came from just like, okay, I'm just let this baby burn. Like I'm gonna let this shit burn till it like falls to ash, and I'm gonna fall out of it and die, but I'm gonna die with peace, I guess. You know, you know, if I just let the house burn and not try to fight this person back or that person back, like I'm cool. I'm not gonna try to like make myself live in that again, like because responding to that is just living in the ego, and like it, and that's just been hell for that's just like hell. We see it all the time, So
yeah, that's an endless trap.
Yeah,
I think everyone needs a little bit of ego, if you want to reach any kind of success. But I mean, I think that's a small spoon.
Yeah, I mean, I just call it like confidence, because I tell people all the time, like my confidence, like it looks like ego, but it's the one that says like when it comes to like spoken word poetry, like I'm one of the best like at spoken word poetry, and when I say that, I could say that in the sense where like I don't have an ego of saying like I'm better than everybody else. It's like no, like I'm good at what I do. Like if there's somebody who's as good as me, like in how I write and how I perform, like that's dope, because like they worked just as hard as I did, and I think that's dope. Like I have a confidence behind what I do. Like I'm confident I can do things. Like as much as cynicism I had for myself being a teacher, I'm like I can do this. Like I've been doing this shit forever. Like I've taught like in schools, like outside the state, outside the country. Like I can do this. Like it's a confidence. It's not so much of a like I'm dope at what I do because I'm a teacher. Like it's like no, I'm dope at what I do because I have a dope energy. Like I just know how to like be here. So
That's
I
awesome,
feel like
man.
it sounds like ego, but I think it's just confidence. I don't think there's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
Like just be like I'm the shit at what I do, motherfucker. Like you can't fuck with this, and if you can, like that's dope. Now like
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah, I think people that don't like that are not people who are successful. You know what I mean? If you look at any successful person ever, they have that. They have some sense of, I'm really fucking good at what I do, and I know I'm really fucking good at what I do.
Yeah.
I've had to develop a certain sense of confidence through this podcast.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it comes from, time and time again, positive reinforcement. I think that helps. But
Yeah.
Also seeing people, something for me, always being an anxious person that's been really revealing about podcasting is like seeing someone across from me really, not I'm saying you are, but like being really nervous. You know what I mean? Like if you're something fidgeting or, kind of being someone who's been socially anxious and been awkward in those situations, it kind of it gives me some perspective.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, it kind of teaches you about yourself, like in a sense. I definitely rock with that.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Well, shit, man. We've been going for about an hour and a half.
Shit.
It's getting dark out.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, I think I asked you before if you had anything you wanted to talk about or discuss. Here's the opportunity. Do you got anything?
No, I think that's everything I want to discuss. I actually kind of tied into that actually.
So. Oh, that's a sign of a good conversation.
That's what I'm saying. Like I knew I was gonna find a way to weave it in there. I was like, man, we're just gonna like go with it and like weave my shit in there. So
Oh yeah, we have a good vibe, man. I really think we should continue to do this in the future. Maybe even do our own podcast or something. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. I'm telling you, like I said, like with the biz tapes things, like there's like also like an opportunity with that. So like I think we should definitely do that for sure. It's gonna happen.
Fuck yeah. Aubs, where can people find you?
Poetic Aubs. Just follow my Instagram, and like literally like if you follow anybody who follows my Instagram, I'm like pretty good. I've made it like a practice of just like linking them to everything that I do, and like just get all that on one swoop. So just follow me on Poetic Aubs, PoeticAubs. You also got stuff on Spotify, YouTube. Yep, Spotify, YouTube, and all that. Yeah, I have a couple projects coming out. Hopefully this fall. I'm not gonna promise anything because again, like I've been in this mode of just like being a teacher and like just being like a teacher and being like a student. Where like music's kind of like whatever comes out. So if it comes out this fall, it comes out this fall, and y'all hear it.
Hey, you gotta release it once done.
Yeah, exactly. If you hear it, go hear it.
Hell yeah. Hey man, it's been a real pleasure doing this all today. Our providing us with both the room for the recording session and doing this.
Oh yeah, it's all over.
Awesome.
It's fun.
I truly feel like I'm like Howard Stern or someone like, Joe Rogan.
Hey.
I got a real legit thing. So
That's
thank
dope,
you for
man.
giving me the opportunity.
Oh, that's love, bro. Yeah, we'll do more, man. We got you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, man.
All right.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it.
Wow.
Have a good one, everybody. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode with Aubrey. Pleasure as always. It was really a pleasure to do it in that studio. I really felt like I was fucking, a late night talk show host or, some bougie ass podcaster. The opportunity to be able to do pod in there was excellent. Aubrey has a lot of connections in the area, and that helps him as well as me. So that's awesome. Stay tuned. Next weekend, we're going to have Bree Perkins on the show. It's going to be another upload. The weekend we are uploading this is when we're going to be filming that because we had another drop. This is the year of drops. But I think every year there's always a handful of jackasses who, for like a brief moment, they're like, hey, yeah, podcast might be fun. And then 3 months later, they're like, yeah, no. But, that's why I'm not doing like a ton of podcasts in advance. Like, I'm not scheduling shit 3-4 months out again. I'm not doing it. I got a tentative list of people that have hit me up and that I want to have come on. And that's how that's going to work. And that, I still have guests booked through October. So I'm still going to be doing this for a while. I probably won't even get to everybody because I got people that I want to have back on, along with people that have been hitting me up and I think could be good additions to the show. Also, I want to expand outside of music. I want to have people that are more, in politics or comedians or, entrepreneurs, maybe painters, that kind of stuff. I really, we've kind of been in this realm of hip hop rap, which is fine. That's a great medium. But I don't want it to get repetitive. I don't want this show to just be, oh hey, Coleman had another rapper on the podcast. Shocking. I want it to be a variety show in a sense. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed and stay safe, all of that. Be smart and have a good night. Peace.